All right, well, let's talk the SEC tournament. That's why we brought you in. March 9th through the 13th in Tampa. This is not in Nashville. This will be in Tampa. Buys Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas with your double buys here. Kentucky is the favorite at plus 200. Auburn plus 270. Tennessee plus 370. Arkansas plus 700. LSU 11-1. Alabama 16-1. Those might be maybe some intriguing long shots. Other than that, I mean, Mississippi State 45-1. And then you're getting into teams that I just don't think are capable of beating, 3 elite teams after, and then 4 in 4 days. So that's as far as we go, but maybe you'll mention one of them. When you first look at this bracket, I mean, I think the thing that jumps out to me is just the potential for the semis, like the Auburn-Arkansas rematch. But can Arkansas get by LSU? And they just played a really tight game. And then the potential for Kentucky, Tennessee, part 3 could be an electric semis day in the SEC tournament. What are your thoughts on the overall bracket, and what are you looking at?
I think there's a lot of things that we need to talk about because the SEC tournament, I think, is different than everything else that we've seen. With the exception of number 5 Auburn.
It just means different. It just means more. I mean, it just means more.
I don't even understand going back to Tampa to play this, but listen, I think this is the one tournament where you can pretty much pencil in the top 4 teams into the semifinals, with the exception of number 5 Auburn in 2019. And as an East number 6 seed in 2008 for Georgia, a top 4 seed has won this tournament every year since 1994. So
in Georgia, there was like hurricanes. We were just talking about needing hurricanes and acts of God and changes of venue. That happened that year when Georgia won it.
Right. So I don't see anything happen. I'll have to check the radar map. We're back in college football season. Hurricanes hitting Tampa, but I mean, only 3 seeds to underline that. Only 3 teams outside the top 4 have ever even made the championship game since 1994. So we can sit here and talk about how much I love how Vanderbilt's playing. They have the second best efficiency over the last 30 days. I think they're going to beat Georgia. I think they have a great chance to beat number 6 seed Alabama, but they're going to run into a wall with Kentucky. As much as I'd like to talk about that, I think it'd be a waste of time to say that anybody's going to jump into these semifinals. The LSU does.
Before you move on from that, though, because Alabama is an intriguing future just because they shoot a ton of threes, so it's a high variance team, which is what you want to look for. But here's the thing. They haven't matched up well with Kentucky. I mean, they went 3 for 30 one game, and then they ended up blowing a big lead when Kentucky was severely shorthanded. And they're going to have to play a back-to-back. But people forget, Vandy's not a given. So keep that in mind with Alabama. It's not a given that Alabama will be Vandy. That variance can work the other way as well. But go ahead.
Right. Yeah, and I think this is one conference where this is, defined by Ken Palm, this is the 3rd strongest conference when it comes to home court advantage. And what that means is going in and getting a road win is a really big deal in the SEC. We know that every year. That's why I always wait live for Arkansas to be down before halftime and then firing on them live, with plus money, because it's just an automatic in this league. And when you look at that, you really want to take into consideration what's your against the spread record on the road. Are you not fazed by, student sections pounding on top of you and referees that are biased by that? Arkansas 7-2 against the spread on the road this year. Vandy 8-3-1 against the spread on the road this year. Tennessee 7-4. Now the worst teams: Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, by far the worst teams on the road against the spread. So as much as I tried to build a case for Alabama, I really think Vanderbilt has a great shot to upset them coming into this. So, if we're talking live betting, I know that there's one thing that I put in when I put my plays on the Action app, I'll say if this is one of those teams, it's one of the streakiest in all of college basketball, because frankly, I don't think you should play pregame bets on teams that have major 10-0 swings in their game. That team is Tennessee. Arkansas and Florida are just right outside that bubble. So, Tennessee is a team that can give up a 10-0 run and put on a 10-0 run right away. And I think from an efficiency standpoint, just a couple other notes before we break down, say, the semifinals. The hottest team over the last month by far, Arkansas, they're net plus 3.2 in Bayesian performance. That's your efficiency rating. And then, right behind them is Vanderbilt at plus 2.8. And then the worst teams over the past month, the ones that are trending down: Mississippi State, Florida, thanks for the non-cover against Kentucky the other day, Ole Miss, they've by far been the worst teams over the past month of play. So it's interesting to see where their heads are at. And, as far as the top 4 seeds go, this is where you and I can start talking semifinals. Arkansas beat LSU twice. I think LSU took themselves out of those games. The Tigers.
Yeah. So what do you think about round 3?
Well, I think LSU had a perfect game plan. Perfect game plan. They used Tari Eason to defend the rim, and you have to do that. Arkansas attacks the rim almost more than in the nation, and they put Xavier Pinson on JD Note and shut him down, didn't allow him to get a shot. That's how you beat Arkansas. LSU just made really, really bad mistakes in the last 10 minutes of that game, and you just can't do that, especially on Arkansas's home court. So, yes, LSU has a chance, but this isn't the only time that they've screwed up. LSU just plays themselves out of games. I don't understand what it is. They're one of the best defensive teams, not just in the SEC, but in the nation, and they just play themselves out of games with
a lot of dumb fouls. Fouls.
Yeah, and you can't send Arkansas to the line. They get to the line more than almost anybody in the nation, and they shoot at a high rate from the charity stripe. So, Arkansas beat them twice. I'll take Arkansas into the semis. Kentucky beat Bama by 9 at home. I don't even know if Bama's going to be the team there. Tennessee swept South Carolina. They beat Mississippi State, so I'm not sure there can be an upset there. And Auburn did lose to Florida by 1 in Gainesville on February 19th, but this Gators team is just a sinking ship right now, even with whatever home court advantage you want to think when you get from Gainesville down to Tampa. So I think the top 4 seeds are definitely in the semifinals.
Yeah, I think that the biggest chance for an upset is LSU, Arkansas. And then, Auburn obviously wants major revenge against Arkansas after getting literally dunked on their face to end that game. I think Kentucky, Tennessee, part 3, they split the regular season 2 blowouts. Kentucky was a bit shorthanded for one. I think Kentucky ends up winning this tournament and beating Auburn. This is the Kentucky Invitational. That's my prediction. I think it's a chalky SEC tournament. Do you have any futures here, and what is your prediction?
Yeah, I actually am going to go against you there, and I can't believe I'm doing it because this is Kentucky's tournament. It's always been Kentucky's tournament. I'll start first with Auburn and Arkansas in the semifinal. You're right. The Hogs won in overtime. Walker Kessler fouled out of that game in overtime, and that's when the Hogs really took off. So that probably won't happen again. Auburn had 24 offensive rebounds and 36 defensive rebounds in that game and still lost because they committed 19 turnovers. And like I said, you can't send Arkansas to the line. They shot 81% on 32 free throws. They're not going to get that kind of ref advantage again with the fouls in the SEC tournament. So Arkansas's offense is based upon transition, cut, and finishing at the rim. That is a really bad combination against an Auburn defense that is 3rd in defending cut plays. They're 12th in the nation in defending plays at the rim with Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler. And on the Auburn offensive side, they're heavy on isolation and they love to shoot off dribble threes. Arkansas is 139th in defending isolation, 94th in off dribble threes on defensively. Effort gets Arkansas a long way. They're the one they just bust numbers in a spreadsheet up because of how much hustle they have in Eric Musselman. But at the same time, they don't have what it takes to beat Auburn on a neutral site. So I'm going to go with Arkansas there. Now, the big game where I had a hard time, the reason why, I was a couple of minutes late joining the program here is because I just could not figure out a winner between Tennessee and Kentucky. Eventually, they split each other, and Tennessee's been hot down the stretch, 3rd best overall efficiency through the past month in the SEC. Kentucky's dealt with injuries, Ty Washington and Severe Wheeler. We don't know how, full strength that they are. But Kentucky's going to want this game in transition. They're 3rd in frequency and 22nd in mid-range jumpers. Tennessee's 231st in transition defense. So that's how you beat the Volunteers. So we'll see if Kentucky's going to push tempo. But, Kentucky is most efficient in post-ups with Oscar Tshiebwe, probably the best player in the nation. But Tennessee's 19th in defending post-ups. So at least they do have some sort of defense that they can throw in there in front of Big O. And the 3 biggest frequency plays for Tennessee on the offensive side, they like to run screens. They do catch and shoot threes, and they do dribble threes. And all of that is set up by threes. So by screens. So that plays right into a Kentucky defense that's top 40 against screens and catch and shoot threes. Where Kentucky gets in trouble on the defensive side of the ball is against dribble threes. So if Tennessee is pushing tempo, they're using screens, and they're hitting dribble threes, they're going to have success and they could win the game. So I ultimately went with Tennessee. They've been hot down the stretch. I shouldn't go against Kentucky. Kentucky's still dealing with injuries. They might be fully 100% healthy. You and I talked about this on the pod last week. I have no clue where this team is health-wise, but how hot Tennessee has been, I'm going to take them here. And then once you get past that, Tennessee, Auburn, everything for me is advantage Tennessee. Tennessee's defense is 32nd in efficiency against dribble threes, and they're 15th against isolation plays. That's all they do with Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith is isolation plays, and they do dribble off the three. Tennessee is, highly ranked, top 35 in both those categories. You switch to the other side, Auburn defense, they're middling in Division I against catch and shoot threes and screens, which is all that Tennessee does. Neither team really has an advantage in bench minutes. We have to talk about this in these tournaments. This will be day 3 in this game. Arkansas is outside the top 300 in bench minutes. I can't take Arkansas future when you're outside the top 300 on a day 3 of a tournament going through this kind of schedule. So when you look at bench minutes,
and your first 2 likely opponents are going to be LSU and Auburn, like up and down games. Like
right. So that's another reason why, Auburn and Tennessee just inside the top 100 in bench minutes. They should be fresh. Kentucky around 217th, I think. So not a big, if they make it in, they might be tired. Who knows with the injuries? I'm going to take Tennessee, over 3-1 odds to win the SEC. I think they're going to make the finals. You could definitely hedge that against Kentucky. I wouldn't hedge it in the finals against Auburn whatsoever. Auburn's just that defense, the fact that they can't handle screens and catch and shoot threes. They're so good at other things like interior paint. Walker Kessler is just a madman. I'd love to see him and Chet Holmgren go at it in the national championship game, but against Tennessee, it's just not what they do. So I'm going to ultimately take Tennessee over 3-1 odds. I think are good. You can hedge a little bit of that against the semifinal against Kentucky. And I don't care who comes out of Auburn or Arkansas. Arkansas doesn't have the gas in the tank. I can't believe I'm saying that about a team that's always like on fire and just up in your face. And then at the same time, Auburn just, losing in Bud Walton Arena, there's no shame in that. I mean, your best player fouled out. You're just not going to have those circumstances again. So give me Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that the injuries for Kentucky could be interesting. As my only future national title future, I hope that they lose, like to win a couple games and lose. I think it's better for next week to just get healthy. That's really the only thing that matters. But I think that they're clearly the best team in the SEC and clearly, a couple points better than Auburn. Their metrics are just deflated because almost all of their key games, they've had one of their key players out, either mid game or before the game get hurt. And still look where they're at. The one good thing, if you are taking Tennessee, I think that they should get to the semis. And Kentucky, as I mentioned, can Alabama get by Vanderbilt? But if they do, it's a high variance team that's going to shoot a ton of threes. They hit 23s, they can take out Kentucky, and then that would obviously work in Tennessee's favor. All right, so you're going with Rocky Top.
Yep,
good stuff on the SEC. Mike, do you have anything else to add on the SEC?
I like Kentucky. I do think Tennessee, having put it together, including that win over Auburn down the stretch, it looks great, but it's not on their home floor. I know, obviously, they don't have to travel to another SEC arena, but I think when you look back on their season, the games that when, they played good teams on the road, they lose to Texas, they lose to Arkansas. They had a few other struggles along the way. I don't have the same enthusiasm. I think the stats are there, but I think in the rematch, I think Kentucky's going to get the best of them. So I'm not sure how I'm going to play it. Probably not just a pure future on Kentucky. I may take take a shot against the spread in the first round and then roll those winnings over and just go money line down the stretch. But I'm on Big Blue Nation.
Yeah, Kentucky, I don't see any value in the future. They're plus 200. If they play Alabama, probably be around a 7-point favorite. Then you play Tennessee, probably be like a 3.5-point favorite. And then if you play Auburn, they'll probably be like a 2.point favorite. So you're talking like minus 350, minus 160, minus 120. You parlay all those together, it's like plus 290, 300. So that's 3-1. Now you could have some upsets and that could get a little lower, but it's not going to go much lower than 2-1. You're going to have to beat 3 top 20 teams. You're going to be 2 top 20 teams in a row, and then you're going to play an Alabama team. Well, they'll probably only be like 7-8 point favorites.
And I'm okay in that spot playing them against the spread because I think if they beat Bama, they're going to crush them. Or to your point, Bama hits 17 threes and they lose outright. I'm fine with that big middle. I think it's pretty binary. I think they either run away with it or they get upset.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to throw
in
about that Tennessee-Kentucky game, because I think it's the most important game in the entire bracket. I'm not sure if anybody thinks Auburn and Arkansas is going to win this thing. So if that de facto semifinal is going to be where the futures are all going to be, then the way I'm going to play this is I'm going to take Tennessee over 3-1. And remember what I said at the beginning is this is one of the streakiest teams in the nation. So when they go on that 10-0 run against Kentucky, it's going to be a great time for me to load up and hedge that Tennessee future because that run's going to come mid-game at some point.
Yep. All right, good stuff on the SEC. Colin, feel free to. Well, BJ, do you have any thoughts before we close it up?
Not really. I think the top 4 seeds, they've not providing that much value. I totally agree with Colin's assessment on Tennessee in terms of their streakiness. They could streak right through this and win the entire tournament, or they could bow out right away. So taking a flyer on them is definitely worth a shot. But also Kentucky is the best team in this conference. So, but definitely not touch them at 2-1. If anything, probably Alabama just as a flyer at 15-1 and hope they get hot from 3 would be where I would go in the SEC.